I do have a PowerPoint that's going to help to keep me on track, I hope. I'll probably go off my script a little bit. Am I talking too loud? I can't really hear myself. Maybe I should just take these earphones out.
No, we hear you.
Okay.
Loud and clear. Just a reminder that we have until maybe 1:15 for you and Mary.
Yeah. So I'm going to share my screen, and I hope that this is going to work. Yes, there it is, I think. And I'll go to the slideshow from the beginning. Is that right? See my screen?
Yes.
Okay. I'll start on slide 2. Thank you for the bio, Stan. I've heard your name, but I've never met you, so it's nice to see you. I was listening to your upbeat invitation this morning, and gratitude for the day, and it was really, really nice and really got me pumped up to be addressing today. I see Mary on. I'll keep it short, Mary, so you can have a turn too. So thank you for the introduction, and I am going to be reading off my script a little bit. And thank you for the invitation to speak today of the beginning years of SOTI. Before I get started, I would like to pay tribute to 4 individuals who are no longer with us, who were at the helm of SOTI in those early years. Lillian McGregor and Bill Messenger were our first elders and sat on the reference group. And Peggy Maneg and Barb White-Eye were 2 of the first regional diabetes workers. Thank you for your outstanding commitment in leading the way. Our memories of them live on, and I'm sure everybody who knew them have the same sentiments of them. And SOTI went on to develop the Bill Messenger Teaching Lodge, I believe. I would also like to mention at this time that although I do have Indian status and belong to a clan, I am not of Indigenous blood or heritage. When I married onto an Ontario Reserve in 1974, I was welcomed with open arms into family and community. I am one of those people who live in, work in, and fit in. I am thankful for the love and acceptance that I have always been shown, love and acceptance that was demonstrated in the true sense when I was adopted into the Wapshishidodem during a sweat lodge in the mid-80s. So what got me started on this journey? Well, I developed diabetes during my first pregnancy in 1979. I became passionate about sharing my story, my experience, and my knowledge, for I saw all around me people who also had diabetes, but perhaps not living as well with diabetes as I was. I wanted and still want this for them. There continues to be, to this day, people getting horrific complications from diabetes, leading to painful and early death. Although this is so, there are also many, many, many people who are living very, very well with diabetes, living long and full lives. They have taken their health seriously and have learned what to do to self-manage. And I would bet a lot of those same people are turning to the IDHC for the support and information needed to live and live well with diabetes. After being away from SOTI, now called the IDHC, for 20 years, I reconnected with them about 5 years ago after going to one of the oh, I forgot to put on my timer. I had a timer here. Just a second here. I don't want to talk too long. So I had gone to a conference in Niagara Falls. We were living in Nova Scotia at the time and working in Labrador. I was wanting to get contract work on Ontario to be closer to home. My parents and my mother-in-law were aging. And of course, kids and grandkids were tugging at my heartstrings. Thanks to Roz and Amanda Lipinski, I was offered a stint with Lindsay Koch in the foot care program out of Sudbury. a year later, I did a review and rewrite of some of the IDHC resources, and now I help with one of the virtual sessions, a monthly sharing circle I do with Kathleen LaForme. So those 20 years between then and now, I'll give you a bridge version. Saw me getting my nursing degree, working in Ottawa, remarrying, moving to Nova Scotia, working in Labrador with the Shashashi and Mushwa Innu First Nations, flying up the North Labrador coast in a twin otter, thank goodness for gravel, and as mentioned, commuting back and forth to Ontario, doing various contract positions. And with that reconnection with Sodi that I just mentioned. So backing up 25 years, let's jump in a time machine here. Whoa, into the recesses of my memory. Here I go, here we go. Some of you in the audience may have been there too, in some way, shape, or form. So I hope I do it justice. When I was asked back in June to do an address at the beginnings of Sodi, I reached out to some of the people who were involved during the first years before I was hired. As far as I can understand, Sodi was formed as part of the Aboriginal Health section of the Ministry of Health to address the rising rates of type 2 diabetes in Ontario. Sodi was to be allocated $454,000 yearly, resulting from meetings between the Ministry of Health and leaders and decision makers of the First Nations and Aboriginal organizations of Ontario. It was decided to get money flowing into communities. So a call for proposals process was used initially. It is my understanding that Sodi and the funded projects were co-managed by the Ministry of Health and staff at the OFC office in Toronto. So I was hired in August of 1995. I initially worked from home on a reserve, but it was within months that we were required to move to Southern Ontario, because Wasauksing and Parry Sound were considered to be in Northern Ontario. We secured office space at the Wata Mohawk territory. I traveled to Toronto every 3 months for reference group meetings by bus. Yes, chicken to drive to the city, in the city. On a phone call one day with one of the co-chairs, she said, Mona, you're going to have to learn to drive to Toronto by yourself. And the next meeting, I want you to. So I did. I was responsible for getting the meetings organized, taking minutes and disseminating the minutes. And another little tidbit, thinking about what to say in this address over the last few days has brought lots of fond memories of those days. So after a few of these meetings, when the first few hours seemed to be mostly a let's catch up session amongst the members of the reference group, we decided to expand the meetings to a day and a half. As you know, when people get together, they like to catch up. So when I was hired in 1995, some community projects were already in the midst of the 3-year projects, and some communities had just been approved for 1-year projects. First on my task list was to contact communities with the news, being it yay, you have been funded, or nay, sorry. As you can imagine, it was pretty obvious this process created some anger and frustration for those communities who worked long and hard on proposals, only to be told no. We then agreed, we being myself and the reference group, that we would come up with a design that would be more equitable to all the communities. Now, I hope I'm on the right slide.
Mona, we only have a couple minutes left for you and for Mary, so we're going to have to ask you to.
Okay.
So we can move on to the next speaker.
Okay. Okay, so in 1996, we held the focus groups to get the community's voice about what it would be that they would like to have the funding go to in a way. At that time, the reference group also decided to apply to become incorporated. This would give more autonomy. We would be required to still report to the funders, which we continue to do on a regular basis, as well as budget projections. I just want to make sure that I'm lined up properly here. Once the decision was made to hire the workers, there was a drafting and approval of the job descriptions, the job postings. There were 60 applicants. The pool was very diverse. So we ended up hiring 5 people for the five positions, the 5 regions that we had previously determined is how we would break up Southern Ontario into the regional approach. And of course, they had to have a car and be able to travel. We had regular meetings. We became very close, and we soon called ourselves the Sodi Sisters. And we also hired an administrative assistant at that time. So in 1997, Sodi became a nonprofit corporation, and the reference group then became the board of directors. Here I have the brochure that I dug up out of my files, the first brochure that we had, and it talked about the Sodi vision and things like that. The regional diabetes workers facilitated events and spread diabetes awareness and prevention messages. We also had a newsletter, and here's a picture of the Sodi sisters, and there's Lillian and Bill on the newsletter.
Mona, we are
Yes. Okay.
we are out of time. You're gonna have to wrap it up. We
Okay.
need to give
Yeah.
Mary a couple minutes. You have
Yeah.
to.
And here's some drums. And in 2001, Roz, one of our Sodi's own, became the executive director, and there's been no looking back. Thank you for your time. I think we got a little bit late in starting, so I could go on and on, but I'm going to hand it over to Mary. Nice to see you again, Mary.